Hello, and thank you for visiting my channel. I hope you're well in the new year. I am excited to share with you another adventure from the accounts of Marco Polo. This episode will detail the King of Mien and Bangala, his great elephants, his vow of vengeance against the Great Kaan, and the great battle that followed. This story picks up all the way back in the 1200s. Can you imagine being there, seeing what Marco saw and was told about? Let's begin. But I was forgetting to tell you of a famous battle that was fought in the kingdom of Wherein in the province of Zardandan, and that ought not to be omitted from our book, so we will relate all the particulars. You see, in the year of Christ, 1272, the Great Kaan sent a large force into the kingdoms of Karajan and Vowed to protect them from the ravages of ill-disposed people. And this was before he had sent any of his sons to rule the country, as he did afterwards when he made Sentamar king there, the son of a son of his who was deceased. Now there was a certain king, called the King of Mien and of Bangala, who was a very puissant prince, with much territory and treasure and people. And he was not as yet subject to the Great Kaan, though it was not long after that the latter conquered him and took from him both the kingdoms that I have named. And it came to pass that when this King of Mien and Bangala heard that the host of the Great Kaan was at Wherein, he said to himself that it behoved him to go against them, with so great a force as should ensure his cutting off the whole of them, insomuch that the Great Kaan would be very sorry ever to send an army again thither to his frontier. So this king prepared a great force and munitions of war, and he had, let me tell you, 2,000 great elephants, on each of which was set a tower of timber, well framed and strong, and carrying from 12 to 16 well-armed fighting men. And besides these, he had of horsemen and of footmen good 60,000 men. In short, he equipped a fine force, as well befitted such a puissant prince. It was indeed a host capable of doing great things. And what shall I tell you? When the king had completed these great preparations to fight the Tartars, he tarried not, but straightway marched against them. And after advancing without meeting with anything worth mentioning, they arrived within 3 days of the Great Khan's host, which was then at Wherein in the territory of Zardandan, of which I have already spoken. So there the king pitched his camp and halted to refresh his army. And when the captain of the Tartar host had certain news that the king aforesaid was coming against him with so great a force, he waxed uneasy, seeing that he had with him but 12,000 horsemen. Needless, he was a most valiant and able soldier, of great experience in arms, and an excellent captain. And his name was Seneschal. His troops too were very good, and he gave them very particular orders and cautions how to act, and took every measure for his own defense and that of his army. And why should I make a long story of it? The whole force of the Tartars, consisting of 12,000 well-mounted horsemen, advanced to receive the enemy in the plain of Wherein, and there they waited to give them battle. And this they did through the good judgment of the excellent captain who led them. For hard by that plain was a great wood, thick with trees. And so there in the plain the Tartars awaited their foe. Let us then leave discoursing of them a while. We shall come back to them presently. But meantime let us speak of the enemy. After the King of Mien had halted long enough to refresh his troops, he resumed his march, and came to the plain of Wherein, where the Tartars were already in order of battle. And when the king's army had arrived in the plain, and was within a mile of the enemy, he caused all the castles that were on the elephants to be ordered for battle, and the fighting men to take up their posts on them. And he arrayed his horse and his foot with all skill, like a wise king as he was. And when he had completed all his arrangements, he began to advance to engage the enemy. The Tartars, seeing the foe advance, showed no dismay, but came on likewise with good order and discipline to meet them. And when they were near and not remained, But to begin the fight, the horses of the Tartars took such fright at the sight of the elephants that they could not be got to face the foe, but always swerved and turned back. Whilst all the time the king and his forces and all his elephants continued to advance upon them. And when the Tartars perceived how the case stood, they were in great wrath and wist not what to say or do. For well enough they saw that unless they could get their horses to advance, all would be lost. But their captain acted like a wise leader who had considered everything beforehand. He immediately gave orders that every man should dismount and tie his horse to the trees of the forest that stood hard by, and that then they should take to their bows, a weapon that they know how to handle better than any troops in the world. They did as he bade them, and plied their bows stoutly, shooting so many shafts at the advancing elephants that in a short space they had wounded or slain the greater part of them as well as of the men they carried. The enemy also shot at the Tartars, but the Tartars had the better weapons and were the better archers to boot. And what shall I tell you? Understand that when the elephants felt the smart of those arrows that pelted them like rain, they turned tail and fled, and nothing on earth would have induced them to turn and face the Tartars. So off they sped with such a noise and uproar that you would have troud the world was coming to an end. And then too they plunged into the wood and rushed this way and that, dashing their castles against the trees, bursting their harness and smashing and destroying everything that was on them. So when the Tartars saw that the elephants had turned tail and could not be brought to face the fight again, they got to horse at once and charged the enemy. And then the battle began to rage furiously with sword and mace. Right fiercely did the two hosts rush together, and deadly were the blows exchanged. The king's troops were far more in number than the Tartars, but they were not of such mettle, nor so inured to war. Otherwise, the Tartars, who were so few in number, could never have stood against them. Then might you see swashing blows dealt and taken from sword and mace. Then might you see knights and horses and men-at-arms go down. Then might you see arms and hands and legs and heads hewn off. And besides the dead that fell, many a wounded man that never rose again, for the sore press there was. The din and uproar were so great from this side and from that God might have thundered, and no man would have heard it. Great was the medley, and dire and parlous was the fight that was fought on both sides. But the Tartars had the best of it. In an ill hour indeed, for the king and his people was that battle begun. So many of them were slain therein. And when they had continued fighting till midday, the king's troops could stand against the Tartars no longer, but felt that they were defeated and turned and fled. And when the Tartars saw them routed, they gave chase and hacked and slew so mercilessly that it was a piteous sight to see. But after pursuing a while, they gave up and returned to the wood to catch the elephants that had run away. And to manage this, they had to cut down great trees to bar their passage. Even then, they would not have been able to take them without the help of the king, own men who had been taken, and who knew better how to deal with the beasts than the Tartars did. The elephant is an animal that hath more wit than any other. But in this way at last they were caught, more than 200 of them. And it was from this time forth that the Great Kaan began to keep numbers of elephants. So thus it was that the king aforesaid was defeated by the sagacity and superior skill of the Tartars, as you have heard. This concludes the account from Marco Polo and the battle between the Great Kaan and the King of Mien. Thank you for watching, and if you enjoyed the video, please consider becoming a subscriber. I really appreciate each one of you. Good day.